Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you some of the real basics of putting together foliage. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a card sprite for this here flower. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this down to make it square. So I'm going to select the marquee, hold shift and drag. And that's going to allow me to make a square marquee. So if I can fit everything inside there, looks like I can. I'm just going to come over here and say image crop. What you do is you hold shift when you drag, and that allows you to crop down your image. Looks like my image might be a little bit red. I'm going to go in here to green and go into my levels, image, adjustment, levels. I'm going to bring my green over a little bit. Adjust it. Alright. That's probably a whole lot more than I needed to cover in that. Let's just do image, adjust, hue saturation. A lot easier way to do this. And there we go. Now it's a little bit more green. That's really all I wanted. Fine. That'll be good enough. Alright. So here's what I need to do. I'm going to use this picture to create a texture. I've saved it as flower source. First thing I need to do, I need to get it to a good size. So this was taken from a photo, so it's huge. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring it down to 512 by 512. Go into zoom, right click and say 100%. And now this is what size it is. Okay. Alright, next thing I need to do is I need to go through and I need to select everything that is not my flower in here. There we go. I'm going to hold Shift F7, Control J to make a new layer. Alright, this is the start of what I have. So let's make a fresh layer underneath this that I'm just going to make bright red so we can kind of see our masking as we go. I'll use my marquee tool to select areas that I don't want and remove them. I'm also going to alternate that with my lasso tool as well. And basically I'm just going through here. I'm just getting rid of the areas that I actually don't want to be part. Alright, now you could take your time doing this, or you could go really fast. It really just depends. There's other tools you could try using depending on how your image is created. If I do select color range and I click that dark area, I could adjust the fuzziness to see if that works. Alright, that's not too bad. Alright, we could probably start off with this. Alright, so first thing you're going to want to know, I'm going to want to rename this D for diffuse, and then here in the background I'm just going to change the color of this to something that kind of matches the main color. Use my, there we go. Alright, so this is going to be my diffuse. So I'm going to do File, Save, and let's select these two guys. We're going to put them in a new group. We're going to call them Diffuse. Alright, and to make a group, you just select the files you have and select the little new folder there. I'm going to select the background, get rid of that. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to take this diffuse layer and I'm going to drag this group down here to new layer and clone it. I'm going to change it to opacity because I need to have two separate textures. I need to have my diffuse, and so I'm going to do File, Save As. I'm going to change it to PNG. I'm going to say flower underscore D, save. Okay. And now here with the opacity, I'm going to change this one. I'm going to lock my selection. I'm going to make my foreground color white and say edit, fill with foreground color 100%. And then this background layer, I'm going to make be completely black. And there we go. So this is going to be what's called my opacity mask. Anything that's white is what shows up. Anything that's black does not show up. So I'm going to take this and select opacity here, and I'm going to hit Control-Alt-E, which is going to make a full solid layer out of that. And I'm just going to adjust the levels on it a little bit. I'm going to push the darkness so that some of those little gray areas in the middle go away. I'm going to grab the middle channel and kind of drag that over a bit. So I'm doing this kind of quick in order to, for the purposes of not having this demo be really long. You could take a lot more time making your opacity and separating the different elements. The more effort you put into it, the better it's going to look. Now I do File, Save As, and I'm going to do PNG, and I want to save this as flower underscore O. Save. Okay. And now that's going to be my opacity map. So if I come in and back in here to max, and I'm just going to drag in a new bitmap. Let's go desktop, foliage, flower source D, bring over one more, flower source O. And then if I bring in a standard material, I'm going to plug the diffuse in and the opacity. If I double click here, I just need to change this to be two-sided. Right? So that way the image will show up on both sides. Now if I make a plane here and reset my layout, I'm going to make this a front view, and in here I'm going to make a plane. And we'll make this relatively small, like 32 by 32, because it is a small flower. Let's just zero that out in the world. There's our grid. We'll open up the material editor. Now if I right click and assign material to selection, nothing happens, it just goes gray. That's because we did not right click and say show realistic material viewport. So there you go. Now we have this kind of little card sitting out there. We can go further. We could convert this to an edit poly, and we can take all those vertex points and raise those up so that their origin is at the bottom, but the flower itself kind of sits up at the top here. So at a bare minimum, you now have a card, piece of foliage. Now you could go further with this if you want. You can go in, I selected the edges, and I'm going to connect them, but I'm going to connect them one time, but I'm going to use slide to slide it over. So now if I wanted, I could take like an edge and kind of move it back a little bit. Oops, I just want to move it back along Y. So I could kind of move it back a little bit, or even over, to kind of give this thing a little bit more form so that it's not just completely flat. You'll always see a little something when you're looking at it, right? You could even go through and ring connect and connect that once just to take that center point, because while we do see it all the time from the side, we do lose a little bit there. But if I put one point in the center and just kind of pull it out like that, then we'll always see a little bit of something. Right? Now an alternative, of course, to that is if I make another plane. So let's just take this guy. Oops. I'm just going to move him over here as a clone and say OK. Go into element, and let's just grab all our vertex points here and align them along Z, and just zero those out so that they sit there at the origin. We could potentially take this, and if we rotate it, we have two of them sitting on top of each other, and so that kind of gives us the effect sort of a little bit of a bush kind of sitting there, because the origin sits there and they're coming up off the stem. And so then you could take one of them and just attach all of these models together, and that's one way to make real simple foliage. Right. Max has a hard time drawing models like this. When you bring it into a game engine like Unreal, it's going to work a lot better. All right. So that's one way to go about creating some basic foliage.